What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Buffalo Property Perspectives podcast. If you're living in or around the Queen City, you've probably heard the buzz, Buffalo's real estate market is red hot. In fact, according to a new analysis by Zillow, Buffalo is projected to be the hottest major housing market in the entire nation for 2025, holding on to that top spot for the second year in a row. But what does this on-fire market really mean for you? Whether you're a current homeowner contemplating a move or someone looking to plant roots in the Buffalo area, you're likely asking the big question, should you buy or should you sell right now?
All right, get ready, because we're diving headfirst into the Western New York real estate scene, specifically Buffalo and Rochester. We've got a mountain of market reports, trend analyses, even some online chatter about specific neighborhoods. Let's try to break it all down.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see both cities experiencing some pretty big price increases, but Buffalo really seems to be on fire right now.
It's true. Everyone's talking about Buffalo. Even Zillow named it the hottest market, not just for 2024, but for 2025 as well. I have to admit, that surprised me a little.
Yeah, I can see why. Buffalo hasn't always been, the first place you think of for real estate. But Zillow's looking at a bunch of factors together, like how much home values are going up, how fast homes are selling, job growth, and how many new homes are being built. All those things combined point to a market that's got some serious momentum.
So it's not just hype. There's actual, substance behind this hot market title.
Absolutely. It's not just about prices going up. It's the whole economy, starting to pick up speed. And that makes a market attractive not just for people who want to live there, but for investors too.
Right. Makes sense. So let's get into the details. Realtor.com says the median list price in Buffalo is a little under $210,000, which is a 23.5% jump from last year. But then they also say it's a balanced market, which seems kind of weird considering all the excitement we're hearing about.
That's why you have to go deeper than just the surface level. Realtor.com might label it balanced overall, but we need to look at what's actually happening, on the ground. For example, Redfin's data shows that homes in Buffalo are getting an average of 8 offers. And Rocket Homes says the median sold price is $240,000.
Wow, 8 offers. That's a lot of competition. So buyers are really fighting to get these properties. But why is there a difference in the median sold price between Realtor.com and Rocket Homes? What explains that?
That difference? Well, it tells us that homes in Buffalo are often selling for more than the asking price. It's a classic sign of a hot seller's market, where buyers are so eager to buy that they're willing to pay extra to get the house.
So that paints a pretty clear picture of just how competitive it is. So what's driving all this excitement in Buffalo? Is it just people leaving expensive cities like New York City and Boston and looking for more affordable places to live?
That's definitely a part of it. We're seeing that trend in a lot of markets. But Buffalo has its own unique things going for it, too. Job growth in Western New York, particularly in education, healthcare, and even a bit of a comeback in manufacturing, is bringing more people to the area.
More jobs, more people needing houses. It's basic supply and demand, right? But is there even enough housing in Buffalo to handle all these new people?
That's the key question. Actually, Buffalo has one of the highest ratios of new jobs to new home permits in the whole country, which means that the demand for housing is growing faster than the supply, and, as we've seen, that pushes prices up.
It's like a real estate tug of war, and the buyers are winning.
Okay, but our listener wants to know about neighborhoods. What's the vibe? What did we find in our research?
Well, you already mentioned Elmwood Village. It's got a reputation for being vibrant and walkable, full of restaurants and shops and that real community feel.
Yeah, Elmwood Village has a cool vibe. I've heard good things. But I also remember seeing that the average sale price actually went down last year. What's the story there?
That's what makes this so interesting. You can't just look at the big trends. You got to zoom in. Maybe it was a correction after a period of really fast growth, or maybe something else is going on specifically in that part of the market.
So maybe Elmwood Village is a chance to get into a popular neighborhood, but at a slightly lower price. Something to investigate for sure.
Exactly. But it shows how important it is to do a careful analysis. Why did prices dip? Is it a trend or just a one-time thing? That's where having a local expert really helps.
Absolutely. Now, what about Allentown? That's the artsy nightlife area in Buffalo, right? Yeah, Allentown has a unique vibe, definitely. Yeah. And the prices there are a lot more affordable than Elmwood Village, which might appeal to different buyers.
And for families, there's Parkside. Right. Peaceful, beautiful, right next to a park. It always gets ranked high on those best places to live lists.
And let's not forget about those areas that are up and coming, places like Black Rock and the West Side. People are talking about them. New businesses are opening. Renovations are happening. That kind of energy that often leads to higher property values down the road.
So potential investment opportunities for someone who can see into the future.
Maybe. And it brings up a good question for our listener. What are the signs that a neighborhood is about to take off? What should you be looking for?
That's a great question to keep in mind as we go deeper into this. Okay, so we've talked about Buffalo neighborhoods, but our sources also mention some areas around Buffalo that are seeing the fastest price increases. Depew, Lockport, Akron, Lewiston, North Tonawanda. I'll be honest, those are not names I'm familiar with.
Yeah, they're definitely not as well known, but that's often where the biggest opportunities are. These areas are seeing some pretty big jumps in value, which might mean they're becoming the next hot spots.
So maybe good for long-term investors.
Possibly. But you have to understand why prices are going up so fast. Is it sustainable growth, driven by things like jobs and the economy? Or is it just a temporary spike? That's the million-dollar question.
And there was this service mentioned for homeowners in those fancy suburbs of Buffalo, something called Opulent Home Helpers.
Right. They focus on those high-end areas, places like East Aurora, Orchard Park, Williamsville. Those areas are known for their luxury homes, and the people who live there often travel a lot or spend their winters somewhere warmer. So Opulent Home Helpers provide premium home watch services.
Basically, peace of mind for people who can afford it. Makes sense, especially with those brutal Buffalo winters, right? Frozen pipes are no joke.
For sure. Having someone check on your property, especially during the winter, can be super valuable. It's about protecting your investment and avoiding those potential disasters.
Okay, so we've got a good sense of the Buffalo market. Hot, competitive, with a mix of established and up-and-coming neighborhoods. Now let's switch gears and talk about Rochester. It may not have the hottest market title, but it's still seeing some impressive price increases, right?
Absolutely. Realtor.com says the median list price in Rochester is almost $180,000, which is a 20% jump from last year. And Redfin's data shows the median sale price is even higher at $201,000.
Wait, so Rochester prices are actually increasing faster than Buffalo?
Yeah, but remember, competitive means different things in different markets. Homes in Rochester are getting an average of 5 offers compared to Buffalo's 8, and they're selling in about 17 days, so it's still a strong seller's market, but the pace is a bit slower.
Fewer bidding wars, slightly faster sales times. Interesting. Okay, let's talk neighborhoods in Rochester. What stood out to you?
Well, a few places kept coming up as desirable areas. The 19th Ward, Maplewood, and the 14621 community. The 19th Ward especially seems to be going through a revitalization, and it's close to the University of Rochester, which is often a good sign for property values.
Ah, the university connection. Always a good thing in real estate. What about some of the trendier spots in Rochester?
Well, Park Avenue is often called the Brooklyn of upstate New York. It's a mix of historic homes and modern amenities, very popular with young professionals.
Sounds like my kind of place. Walkable, trendy, probably a few too many craft breweries.
And then, of course, there's Pittsford. If luxury is what you're after, that's the place to be. Great schools, upscale homes, that whole premium suburban lifestyle.
But premium comes with a premium price tag, Ro.
You got it. The median home price in Pittsford is around $450,000.
Okay, so we've got a feel for the overall trends and some key neighborhoods in both Buffalo and Rochester. Now let's get practical. You've been looking into home improvement strategies, specifically things that could help someone make the most of this hot market. What did you find?
This is where it gets really interesting, especially for someone who's thinking about buying a place to fix up or flip. The data shows that focusing on exterior projects often gives you the biggest bang for your buck, even more than big interior renovations.
Really? So curb appeal is more important than a fancy kitchen. That's surprising.
It might seem counterintuitive, but those first impressions are everything. And there are some specific exterior upgrades that consistently have a high return on investment, or ROI.
Now, for those of us who aren't real estate experts, could you quickly explain what ROI means and why it matters?
Sure. ROI, or return on investment, is just a way to measure how much profit you make on an investment compared to how much you spent. So a high ROI means you're getting more back for your money.
Got it. So which exterior upgrades have the best ROI?
Believe it or not, something as simple as replacing your garage door can have an incredible ROI of 100%.
Wait, so if you just swap out your old garage door, you could essentially make back all the money you spent when you sell the house.
Exactly. It sounds basic, but buyers love it. It instantly modernizes the look of a home. Another great option is replacing old wood windows. That can give you an ROI of around 95.5%. And then there's siding replacement, both fiber cement and vinyl, which have ROIs in the low 90s.
So even if you don't do a huge renovation inside, focusing on the exterior can really add value to a property. What about upgrades inside the house? Any strategic moves there?
Well, kitchens and bathrooms are still important, no doubt. But instead of completely gutting them and spending a fortune, the smarter play is to focus on smaller, more cost-effective updates. In kitchens, think new countertops, refacing the cabinets, maybe upgrading to energy-efficient appliances.
So things that make a big visual impact without needing to take out a second mortgage.
Exactly. Those kinds of minor kitchen remodels can give you an ROI of around 96%. And in bathrooms, focus on replacing fixtures, updating the tile, putting in a new vanity and lighting.
Again, making it look fresh and modern without breaking the bank.
Exactly. Those mid-range bathroom remodels can have an ROI of about 73%. Now here's something that might surprise you. Finishing a basement often has a surprisingly low ROI, only around 22.7%.
Really? I always thought finishing a basement, adding that extra living space was a good investment.
It can be, but the cost of finishing a basement often ends up being more than the value it adds, at least in these markets. Buyers in Western New York seem to be more interested in those exterior upgrades we were talking about. Those are what make that first impression and boost the curb appeal.
Okay, so maybe skip the man cave unless it's really important. It sounds like the key is to understand what buyers are looking for right now in Western New York and make your upgrades based on that.
You nailed it. And that's where having a good local real estate agent who's active in those markets can be so valuable. They're out there every day seeing what's selling and what's not.
Makes sense. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's touch on something that's super important for anyone buying or renovating: permits and regulations. It's not the most exciting topic, but it's crucial.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that can really trip people up if they're not careful. Both Buffalo and Rochester require building permits for a lot of projects. New construction, renovations, additions, even building a deck in some cases.
So, no DIY projects without checking with the city first.
Right. There are some exceptions for small things, like painting, putting up wallpaper, or replacing fixtures in the same spot. But anything that involves changing the structure or working on plumbing, electrical, or HVAC systems usually needs a permit.
Got it. What about zoning regulations? I know this can affect things like adding on to your house, right?
Absolutely, especially if you're thinking about adding an accessory dwelling unit, or ADU. Local zoning codes determine things like how big it can be, where you can put it, and even parking requirements. You need to make sure your plans follow those rules.
So, no building that granny flat in the backyard without checking the zoning rules first.
Got it. And then there are environmental regulations to consider, especially for older homes.
You mean things like lead paint and asbestos? Exactly. Those hidden dangers that can be lurking in older properties.
Yeah, those are important to be aware of. In both Buffalo and Rochester, inspections for asbestos-containing materials are required before doing any renovation or demolition work in older buildings. And the regulations on lead paint are very strict, especially for homes built before 1978.
It's all about safety, right? Both for the people living in the house and for the workers doing the renovations.
Exactly. Ignoring those regulations can have serious consequences, both legal and financial. So it's always best to be informed and follow the rules every step of the way.
Great advice. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, but there's still more to come. In part 2, we'll shift our focus from this market overview to some deeper insights into economic factors and investment strategies. Stay tuned.
You know, while we're talking about regulations, it's a good reminder that knowing what a property is really worth is crucial. Before you even start thinking about permits and all that, you need to know what you're actually dealing with.
Yeah, that's true. I know there are all those websites that give you an estimate of a home's value, but are those actually accurate? Should you just always get a professional appraisal?
Those online tools can be helpful for like a quick ballpark figure, but they're basically just using algorithms and public data, which can be out of date or missing information sometimes. A professional appraisal, that's the gold standard. An appraiser actually goes in, checks out the specifics of the property, the condition, the features, recent sales in the neighborhood, all that to give you a much more accurate idea of what it's worth.
So it's like those online estimates are like dipping your toes in the water, but a professional appraisal is diving in head first.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Especially if you're planning to do some major renovations or maybe you're thinking about flipping a house. Getting an appraisal is essential to make smart financial decisions.
Right, you don't want to jump in blind. Okay, we've talked a lot about the housing market specifically, but what about the bigger picture? What's happening in Western New York economically that's driving all this growth?
That's such an important question. You can't just focus on the housing trends themselves. You got to look at the context. One of the key factors in both Buffalo and Rochester is job growth. The whole Western New York region has been adding jobs, especially in areas like education, healthcare, and even some manufacturing jobs are coming back.
So it's like more jobs means more people moving to the area, which means more demand for housing, which pushes those prices up. It's all connected.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's not just the number of jobs, but also the types of jobs. Higher paying jobs attract people who have more money to spend, and they might be looking for a certain kind of lifestyle, which impacts the housing market too.
Right. Like those folks moving from New York City, they're probably used to a certain standard of living. Are there any specific initiatives happening in Western New York to attract businesses and create jobs? Like, are they actively trying to boost the economy there?
Oh, absolutely. There are lots of efforts behind the scenes to bring in investments and support businesses. Organizations like the Western New York Economic Development Initiative, the Buffalo-Niagara Partnership, and the Erie County Industrial Development Agency are all working to create a thriving business environment.
So it's not just random luck that Buffalo and Rochester are doing well. There's a real concerted effort to make those economies stronger, which of course has a ripple effect on the housing market.
It's all connected. A strong economy helps create a healthy housing market, and then a healthy housing market attracts more people and more businesses. It's a positive feedback loop.
It's fascinating to see how all these pieces fit together. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what are some key takeaways you want to leave our listener with?
Well, the main thing is the Western New York real estate market is hot, especially Buffalo. But it's really important to go beyond the headlines and look at the details, the nuances.
So don't just blindly trust what you read online or see on the news.
Exactly. Do your research, compare different sources of information, really analyze those numbers. Remember how we were looking at those data points about Buffalo being both balanced and super competitive? That's when you have to think critically and use your judgment.
Right, because sometimes those data points can tell you more about the market than a simple label like balanced ever could.
You got it. Another important takeaway is don't underestimate curb appeal. Our research shows that those exterior upgrades, they consistently have a high return on investment, even more than some of those big fancy interior renovations.
So focusing on that first impression is key. Things like a new garage door, fresh siding, nice landscaping, that could be worth a lot in the end.
For sure. And lastly, remember that real estate isn't just about the buildings themselves. It's connected to the economy, local regulations, even the lifestyles of the people who live there. It's a complex system.
So you have to stay informed, be flexible, and adapt to the changing market.
Exactly. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, but there's still more to explore. In part 3, we'll shift our focus from the big picture to the more specific and give some advice that's tailored to our listener and their interests in the Western New York real estate market.
Okay, so welcome back for the last part of our Western New York real estate deep dive. We've looked at all the market trends, checked out some of those hot neighborhoods, even talked about those smart home improvement strategies. Now let's bring it all together and figure out what it means for you, our listener.
You know, I've been going over your notes, the things you mentioned you're interested in, and I think based on what we've learned about the Buffalo and Rochester markets, there are some pretty cool possibilities here.
Oh, awesome. Let's get specific.
Okay, so you said you're looking for a neighborhood that's vibrant and walkable, a strong community feel, right? A place that's lively and fun, but still feels like home.
Yeah, definitely. That seems to fit with some of those areas we've been talking about.
It totally does. Elmwood Village in Buffalo pops into my head right away. It's got that energy, that bustling urban vibe, but it's also known for being a tight-knit community. Lots of great local businesses.
And remember how we talked about Elmwood Village having that dip in average sale prices last year? That could be a really interesting opportunity for someone who wants to get into a really desirable neighborhood, but maybe at a slightly better price.
That's a great point. But, of course, we need to do some more research to really figure out why those prices dipped. Was it just a temporary thing or is something else going on? That's where a local agent could really help.
For sure. Local knowledge is key. Now, you also said you were kind of intrigued by the idea of finding a place in an up-and-coming area.
Oh, yeah, those hidden gems, right? Those places that are just starting to take off and have a lot of potential for growth. From our research, those areas like Black Rock and the West Side and Buffalo, they seem like they might fit the bill. They're attracting a lot of new residents, young entrepreneurs, and we're seeing lots of renovations and new businesses popping up.
It's like that classic neighborhood revitalization story, right? It starts to get a buzz, more people and businesses come in, and the whole area transforms.
Exactly. And it usually happens kind of slowly, gradually. So if you can get in early before it becomes super trendy and the prices really start to climb, well, that could be a pretty smart move.
It's all about having that vision, right? Seeing the potential before everyone else does. Now, another thing you mentioned was wanting a property with some space for a home office, maybe even a small rental unit.
Yeah, with so many people working from home these days, having that dedicated space is super important. And in a market like Buffalo, where rental demand is going up, having a rental unit could be a great way to bring in some extra income.
Definitely. So what kind of property would make sense for that? What should we be looking for?
I think a larger, older home with a flexible layout would be ideal. You know those beautiful old houses that might have an attic or a basement you could convert into a separate living space?
Yeah.
Or, if the zoning allows for it, you could even build an accessory dwelling unit, an ADU, in the backyard.
Right. But we have to remember those zoning regulations we talked about. Not every property is going to be okay for an ADU.
Absolutely. You always got to do your homework, check those local zoning codes before you get too excited about any specific plans.
No building that dream granny flat without making sure it's allowed. Now, I know you're also really into those historic houses, and luckily Buffalo has a ton of those beautiful old homes.
Oh, for sure. Buffalo's architectural history is incredible.
Yeah.
We've got those grand Victorian mansions, those cute craftsman bungalows, all kinds of styles.
Yeah.
And a lot of times those older homes come with bigger lots, which gives you more options for creating that home office or rental space we were talking about.
It's the best of both worlds. All the character of an old house, but with the functionality of a modern space.
Exactly. Now, we've talked a lot about buying and renovating, but maybe you're thinking, I just want something I can move into right away.
Oh, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want to unpack and relax.
Exactly. And the good news is both Buffalo and Rochester have plenty of options for that. There's new construction, beautifully renovated homes that are ready to go. It all depends on what you're looking for and how much you want to spend.
And this is another area where working with a local real estate agent can be so helpful. They'll know what's available, they understand the pricing, and they can guide you through the whole process.
Couldn't agree more. They're your partner in this whole thing.
Okay, so we're wrapping up our deep dive. What's one final thought-provoking question you want to leave our listener with as they consider their next move?
Well, we talked about those areas around Buffalo that are seeing those really fast price increases, places like Depew and Lockport. What do you think? Do you think those might become the next hot neighborhoods in a few years? What are some signs you would look for to figure that out? And how could you maybe position yourself to take advantage of that potential growth?
That is a great question. It all comes down to understanding how the market works, seeing those trends as they emerge, and then making smart decisions.
Exactly. And remember, the more you know, the better off you'll be, especially in a market like this that's changing all the time.
Well said. We've given you the information, the insights. Now it's time to get out there and explore the exciting world of Western New York real estate. Good luck.